Need another intro. We're here on the Remi review in the studio.
Say what?
Guitar. I have a guitar. I don't know how to intro the show today. There's nothing interesting to say. But the show is going to be about who to blame. This is a show about blame. This is the blame episode. And for the news fail, we're going to be covering that they'll be able to start drilling for oil in the Gulf of the St. Lawrence. And in the consume section,
Hang. World.
who is to blame? Are you to blame? Are you to blame? Are you the one we should blame? Are you the one we should blame? Who is to blame? Most of the population has realized at this point that something has gone awry, that something is wrong with the world. So now we're all trying to decide who to blame. And thankfully, bankers are near the top of the list. People are finally starting to talk about bankers as terrible people who cause suffering and poverty around the world. It's great that that's finally getting out.
Testify!
But an even bigger story in the mainstream about who to blame, you know who's to blame? You are to blame. This is what the news will tell you. You, me, we're to blame. Regular people. They're trying to create this story that consumers are at fault for everything. Consumers. As a consumer, we've dictated that factories pollute, that people in the third world work for next to nothing and have their nations destroyed, that our economies are failing, that there's poverty and starvation everywhere. Consumers are to blame for that.
That's so not right.
Consumers provide demand. That's all we do. Consumers provide demand. We don't give direction. Direction comes from the people in charge. It's a corporation is a hierarchy. It's very simple. There's one guy up here. There's a few people under him. There's a few people under them. It's a hierarchy. It works like military. There's a general in charge who provides direction. If you want to blame someone, blame the person who provides direction, the person in charge, the person who said, make this product and do it cheaply and do it in a way that will save us some money, make us some profit, but is going to be terrible for society. That's what you have. You have people providing direction. Because there's a demand out there, it doesn't mean anything. There's a demand for crack cocaine. You don't blame the junkie for the fact that there's someone selling crack cocaine. You go after the crack dealer. That's the person who's to blame. That's the person who's providing the bad product. That's the person who's giving direction for a production that is terrible, that's destroying society. You blame the person who did it. It's simple. You did it. You did it. Consumer didn't do anything. Consumer grabbed something in the store and walked home with it. That's it. If it wasn't there in the store, they wouldn't have grabbed it and walked home. But it's irrelevant. All the work that went into putting that thing in the store happened because of direction, because of someone in charge of someone else, telling them, this is how we're going to do it, this is how we're going to make money from it.
Show them how it is.
And militaries aren't directed by the people. You can't blame American people, the regular person in America, for the abuses that the American army perpetrates on the world. There's no illusion of a line of direct power there, that the American people actually have control of their military anymore.
Do you think that you can act without Congress and initiate a no-fly zone in Syria without congressional approval?
You know, again, our goal would be to seek international permission, and we would come to the Congress and inform you and determine how best to approach this, whether or not we would want to get permission from the Congress. I think those are issues we would have to discuss as we decide what to do here.
Voters don't tell their representatives to lie to them and cause mass suffering. Taxpayers aren't even consulted about government spending. You're unhappy with government spending, and somehow that's the fault of the taxpayer? It's the same system with goods and the production and purchasing of goods. The person who had the money at the very end did nothing but handed over to get something. They provided no direction. The dependent, fearful modern man has no power. How can you say that somebody who has no power and no rights is to blame for anything? You have no power, you're not doing any of it. When elites do something bad, the news doesn't talk about it because they can't. Rich people own their stations. Rich people own corporations and banks. So the big news outlets can't talk about the crimes of the elites. So they pick on crimes of poor people. And that's all we see in the news. A poor person does something terrible, even murder. The CEOs, the elites, are killing millions of people every year because of the economic system. But they don't report about this in the mainstream because they're not allowed, or they'll lose their jobs, they'll lose their station. And even their access to the economic system, you look at the derivatives market, it's $1,200 trillion gets traded in the derivatives market. The GDP of Canada, my country, Canada, is around 1.7 trillion a year. And in the derivatives market, they have 1,200 trillion. So you think that when there's a market out there that can be manipulated, they prove that these financiers manipulate derivatives constantly. The LIBOR scandal, $300 trillion market that was manipulated, and they've seen hundreds of banks around the world that were complicit in this manipulation. And tell me who you think is in charge when the whole country is 1.7 and these financiers have 1,200 trillion in their market, and they can manipulate that. If they can manipulate something worth 1,200 trillion, I think they can probably manipulate something worth 1.7 trillion. The Harper government has been doing everything it possibly can to serve the crank-turners, the corporate crank-turners, and the people running the show, running our economies. They do everything possible to repeal laws and let them do whatever the hell they want. Anyway, hidden in the 300-page budget that they released, that isn't a budget at all, it's just a reshaping of our entire country, that one of the aspects of this is that they'll be able to start drilling for oil in the Gulf of the St. Lawrence. Like not in the ocean, but actually in the Gulf of the St. Lawrence River. This is where the fish go in for their spawning grounds. This is where like ocean life is spawned. Ocean life begins at the deltas of rivers, the Gulf where rivers meet the ocean. That's where life in the oceans happens. It's the most sensitive part of the ocean. And they've made it so that they can drill there. They're going to drill for it under the Arctic ice, which is impossible to clean because you can't just scrape it off the surface like you did in the Gulf of Mexico when they had a massive spill. It would sit under the ice and there's no way to clean it. And we see oil spills constantly. There's constantly oil spills. And the US doesn't even need this oil. We ship oil straight into the States and they export it. The United States has more oil than they need. They can't even process it all. They actually export oil. So we export it to another country so that they can in turn export it again. It's ludicrous, and we're drilling for more. Desperately, we gotta find more oil. We gotta find more oil that we don't need. And all the time, of course, gas prices are soaring here. We're not actually seeing any of the benefit from this oil. Here we are in Canada, one of the biggest oil producers in the world, and where's the benefit? We have expensive oil. Over and over, they want to keep telling us that Canada is an oil-based economy. I mean, look at this place. It's the second biggest country in the world, and it's loaded with resources, and it has a tiny population to support. This is not an oil-based economy. It's ridiculous. We're an everything-based economy. We have it all here. We don't even need profits from oil. It's ludicrous. The only reason why they're able to sell this idea that we're an oil-based economy is because they're stealing our productivity and our money from us outright.
Yeah, Remi.
So anyway, I had some quick ideas for where we could drill for oil, because they're running out of places to drill for oil in Canada. I was thinking we should start looking to see if there's some oil in Niagara Falls. We could drill right into the falls. Maybe there's some oil in Mount Logan. Let's put an oil rig on the top of Mount Logan and just drill into there and see if there's something good. Or the Ottawa River. Let's put an oil rig right out in front of Parliament in the Ottawa River. There might be some oil down there. It's at least worth destroying the river to find whether or not there's oil there. We could start putting oil rigs in the hospitals. There might be oil under the hospitals, public schools. Stephen Harper's forehead. Maybe we'll drill for oil in Stephen Harper's forehead. This is gonna make for some good pictures, eh?
Consume.
Hang and Fang Nang batteries bring you headlights, differential gear, four-wheel suspension, and infinite power. Endorsed by Car World, high speed, powerful, stop, compete, exact, galloping, infinite power.
Culture.
Jim Smechlin on the Remi review. Culturally, culture, in this culture section, we're going to be talking about, not talking, we're going to listen. Trying to make those parts quicker because I don't ever have anything to actually say. Man, this is going good. It's fast.